really in dangerous situation. Any one of us could lose their life. There is so many beautiful stories of compassion in the Middle East every day that are not being told. The trust worked and people kept each other safe. Life is an adventure. Live your life, be adventurous. God is watching us and will reward us for our good deeds.
Hey guys, welcome to Take a Leap. This is a Gen Z focused podcast highlighting young people who are changing the world for the better through their faith. I'm Ocean Marshall.
And I'm Naftali Rodriguez. And each week we sit down with young leaders, creatives, and world changers who are living their faith out loud.
But first, Man on the Street. This episode we went around asking students, what's the nicest thing someone's done for you this week? So let's see what they said.
What's the nicest thing someone's done for you this week?
Someone bought me lunch.
What was it?
Just ramen.
My roommate invited me over to dinner with her aunt and uncle on Sunday, and so it was super nice to not have to cook dinner at all.
Seeing all my friends from BYU again and hanging out with them and having dinner with their families.
I had a friend this week who wanted to play a specific game, and so he bought me and the other friends in our friend group that game so we could all play together.
I had a friend help me practice I had a Chinese test and he helped me practice for it.
Can you say some things?
如果你想要让世界上更好，你就应该帮养你自己的朋友们。
Now for today's guest, Shadi Martini. He grew up in Syria and later became a humanitarian leader.
Now he works with Multi-Faith Alliance and is helping others through difficult times. Something that I really liked about this interview was when he talked about multi-faith relationships and gave us advice for them. So I think that was cool.
Yeah, something that I liked about their interview was how his story is just insane. He grew up in Syria and literally was saving people's lives behind government's back, and I don't know, I think it's just super, his story is really cool, and I'm excited for people to actually listen to it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this episode is about finding opportunities to serve others and finding your purpose, so let's get into it.
We have a super awesome icebreaker question to get it started, and the question is, what's the nicest thing someone's done for you?
Oh, well, something that stuck in my mind, like I remember I was working in Bulgaria and trying to, helping refugees in 2013. There was a period when a lot of people went through the Balkan route, about 30,000 people, mainly from Syria, where I'm originally from. So I remember we were helping in this makeshift camp to provide like warm clothes because it was winter, it's very cold. And this elderly couple were sitting there not asking for anything, but we were trying to distribute everything. And this guy came to me, he's like an older gentleman, and he said, I saw that you guys are like providing mattresses. Can you get me a mattress because I didn't get any? And I said, well, why didn't you? I said, well, apparently you don't have enough for everyone. But my wife, and they're like 70s, close to 80s. And he said, like, we're sleeping on concrete, and my wife has a problem in her back. I wanted to help him somehow, but there was no mattresses. So I remember there was, in one of the warehouses, there was like a mattress. I remember I saw it somewhere hidden below like the jackets and everything. So it was becoming dark. I took the car, went to the warehouse, which was 20 minutes away, started digging into the clothes, and I found it, and I found like it's a surprise. Like I was so happy, and I went back and I gave it, and he was so overwhelmed. And after a year, and I was doing some activities, and I was sitting there with other people, and this guy comes to me and like hugs me. And he said, you're such a nice person. And I was like, well, thank you. But I didn't remember who this guy is. And I said, thank you, but where do we know each other? He said, do you remember this incident when you went and got me the mattress? It was such an overwhelming. I felt this is the nicest thing that someone could do to me. Like recognize like something and say these nice words. Like we hugged each other and we were tearing up, both of us. And it was such an emotional and nice thing. And it stuck in my mind that sometimes how important is a nice word, a good gesture to a human being could be. And I still consider it probably the best thing that someone did to me.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that story. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you?
I could still tear up when I say it every time.
No, I imagine.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing that's coming to my mind when I think of like the nicest thing someone's done for me is just the small things. Like when my dad fills up my gas on the weekends, or just like someone giving me a compliment, like you said, or like complimenting something I've done for them, like just super small, like kind things, I think go a long way.
Yeah, I feel always it's how it's like if it's coming from the heart. The more you feel like the person who's doing this to you, no matter how small or big, but if it's genuine, like you feel the love attached to it, in my opinion, that's what matters. For me, that was the most important thing for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Neff?
For me, I was thinking I went on a hike like a couple of months ago, and I don't know why, but I didn't charge my phone, and it was like a 7 or 8 mile hike, and I was by myself, and I had gone to the wrong trail. I was like recording, I brought my camera, and I realized I had ended up in the wrong place, and I was like literally terrified because I had no light. I had like 3% on my phone, and I had just hiked 7 miles, so it would have taken me like 2 or 3 hours to get back home. I ended up at a ski resort, and they were closed for the season. Anyways, I was like literally panicking. I was like, what am I gonna do? And then out of nowhere, I hear like a car and a honk, and I'm like, I just go to the car, and it's this guy, it's a worker. He's like, hey, like, you shouldn't be trespassing. But he's like, hey, like, we saw you on the camera, like, what's going on? Anyways, like, he drove me to my car and like gave me like some food from his truck, and like for me, he like saved my life, I feel like, because there's lots of like moose and lots of wild creatures there. Anyways, I told myself I'll never go without a charged phone and steer off the trail. And I don't know, that was just so cool. I took a selfie with him, and he was an immigrant from like Thailand, and he was just like so sweet, just willing to help. And I was like, wow.
It's overwhelming when in total strangers that does these acts of kindness, and I'm like, there's so many instances that I've seen this thing, and it's very, very, very powerful when someone is not related to you, had nothing to do with you, and does these acts of kindness. I think that's very powerful. If you go like through faith and what we heard of stories either in the Bible or in the Quran or other religions, like it's these acts of kindness that are always highlighted and how important they are for humans in general.
And we're excited to get into how you've now helped other people. We've done some research on how you've helped a lot of people, so we're excited to get into that today. So you grew up in Syria and later became a humanitarian leader. We're curious to hear, how did your early experiences shape the way you see religion and service today?
Well, I was brought up in a city called Aleppo. It's in the north of Syria. Some people say it's the biggest city in Syria. Let's say it's diverse communities, like it's Christian, Muslims, and we have other ethnicities, Armenian, Kurds, and so it's a mixed community. And I went to school in a like a Christian school, even though I'm Muslim, I'm not Christian, but that had brought me into I had a lot of friends who were from different faith groups, and so that gave me an opening to understanding like other faith groups and understands like where people are coming from and the history and their faith and their religion. So that helps in shaping how I approach other people that are not the same faith as me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you have a specific moment in your life where you realized that you wanted to pursue humanitarian work?
Yeah, it was the conflict in Syria. I was living in Syria, and when the Arab Spring started happening in the Middle East, I was managing a hospital in Syria. It was my family's business. My family owned this hospital, and I was witnessing what's going on. And when students like people like you, and hospital is very close to the university, and they started demonstrating, and the police and secret police and the militias associated with them would beat them and haunt them, and so I would see that this thing happening, and a lot of these students they would go and escape through our hospitals, or go in one entrance and leave with another exit. But the other problem that they were facing, that some of them would get shot, some would be beaten severely, or with a knife being stabbed. So they needed treatment, and if you want to go to treatment to a hospital, the hospital, we were required and we were asked by different agencies that we need to inform on these. So people avoided hospitals, but they needed treatment. So that's when I decided with some friends and to start helping them secretly providing this medical assistance, and this thing became bigger and bigger as the demonstrations and all these events started throughout Syria, which is around 23 million at that time.
I can't imagine how hard that must have been to see that, but what's beautiful is that you've seen that in a kind of as a calling. It's like you've done that and been able to help so many people along the way. How was that like for you to be like having to see all these things? And you said it was kind of through secret, right? How was that like for you guys getting started?
Oh, it was very scary. It was very scary because the Assad regime in Syria was very well known for its brutality. You would disappear and you most likely will be tortured to death. Like we discovered after the fall of the regime last year that there was 100,000 people who were in prison, and a lot of people and their families saw that they were still alive. Unfortunately, when the prisons were open and everything, I think the number came out between 3,000 to 5,000 people who were still alive. And everyone else were just executed or killed or under torture or in very extreme condition. That's in addition to around 1 million people that perished in the war activities. So it was very scary, and we knew it. We had experienced this before, so we were very careful. We would know that anyone who would tell on our work, that will be it for us. And so we managed to work in secret for around a year. Me and my colleagues, something like cells. We used to have cells, like closed cells. We used to do the financing and the procurement and prepare everything for anyone who needed like medical aid. We were of means. We had our own finances, so we didn't need anyone. So we were just gather money among us and source this. And me as a hospital manager, it was a perfect cover. I could buy stuff for the hospital, and I had a friend who had a company that would distribute medical supplies and medical equipment, so it was a perfect cover. And no one expected that people like us would risk it all to help people that we had, we didn't know. We would send most of the time, we didn't know who's the individuals that are getting it, but we knew that these areas or these folks needed medical help.
During that time, I bet you had to have a lot of trust in your partners and even your patients, and faith also.
I always had faith in people, but at the same time I knew that people, when they are put in a distress situation, as much as they have faith, maybe they could care less about their lives to save others. But when there was a tactic that was used, and it's used throughout these dictatorships and authoritarian regimes that is very scary to each and every one of us, is that to use your family members or loved ones. So that was one of the reasons that I moved my family to the U.S. back in 2011, because I was worried about them. I was worried about them getting there. And one of the scariest moments was one of my very close friends, who was my roommate at college, disappeared. And we understood that he was arrested, and we knew that he was being tortured. So I was very worried at that time, would he say anything about the things that we were doing. He didn't, but when he got out, it was his condition was scary. I'm happy that he is alive, but he was severely tortured.
How did that motivate you to continue to help people? How did those moments and experiences motivate you to maybe focus more on your faith and your values? How did that boost all of that?
There is moments in your life that you think is this is the moment. If you don't do something, how can you live with yourself after that? This is the calling for you, and it has to come from your belief and faith in God, and that this thing is going to be rewarded either in this life or the other life, and it will be rewarded through also your family, your children, and how they see you as a role model. So my son is born in 2008, so he was 3 years old, and I was thinking I could have a choice that stay, look the other way, don't care, but I was what am I going to tell my kids if one day they look at the history of my home country and what happened and ask me what did you do? Did you do anything? And I was I kept care of business, and I didn't feel that was something that would make me feel worthy of myself and happy with my life. So that was an important thing that I always thought about and struggled with. And I took this choice, and I still think that it was the right choice, even though it went through a lot of scary moments. But I think that was the correct choice to do.
I love that you said that you wanted to look back and see that you did something worthwhile. Have you seen a moment in cooperation, either during your humanitarian work or somewhere else, where different faith groups changed the outcome of a crisis?
Look, I was in a very sheltered community, even though we have different faith groups, but mainly Syrians, mainly people who speak Arabic. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of other communities, but at the same time, it wasn't like this type of activity, humanitarian work with other communities. So it was an eye-opener how many people that had no connection to me or to Syria or Syrians came out and said, we're going to help you because you need help right now. That's it. And these people came from so many different faith groups, and they were all, motivated by their desire to help a person who is in need. I felt how courageous these folks are to do that when they are not related to. I didn't do it. I wasn't that good like they are. So I had a lot of admiration for the people that came out and tried to help.
Well, as humans, I feel like it's so natural for us to see what's going wrong and be like, hey, I need to do something to change this, And I'm sure you've seen that firsthand, seeing so many different religions and so many different groups of people come together to help one another. I think that's super beautiful, and the fact that you can do that with your head up and chest high, and tell your kids that, hey, I've done good things, and I've done my best to help other people. Looking back at it, what would you have told yourself, been some words of motivation?
In 2013, when I was working and I was approached by, for instance, an Israeli NGO, and Israelis that wanted to help Syrians. And it was a huge shock for me, because in Syria we were at war with Israel and we viewed them as the enemy. And somehow we had a certain perspective of Israelis. And to have people approaching you, that was a little bit weird and an eye-opener. And it turned to see people as humans and individuals, not to label or judge them because they're connected to one country or one group. So that was also a very important dynamic in how I approached, my work and life after that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Taking a quick little break from these questions, we have another fun icebreaker, and it's, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I remember I was on a panel and we were talking about humanitarian work and refugees and displaced people, and it was very successful. I was very proud of myself and saying, "Oh, I'm good. I'm doing great. We're doing all of this." And I had a very wise friend, and I said, what do you give me as an advice, in life? You're a very wise man, successful person, and one thing he told me, he said, keep your feet on the ground. Don't fly that high, think that you're the best, don't be arrogant. Be connected to the people you work with, the people you serve. Try to see them as equals, and that will help you in life. And I truly believe that that's a very important life advice, and I implement it every day in my life, how I work with people and interact with them.
That's amazing. What about you, Neff?
I think some of the best advice I got was from my grandma. It was a little bit after my grandpa passed away, and she was just telling all of us how important it is to just remember where you come from. And that to me was just a super cool reminder to see where my parents and my heritage is, and to see the sacrifices they've made and done for me to be here. It was just a very wholesome moment. It was a good moment with me and my grandma, and I'll always remember that. And so, yeah. What about you, Ocean?
The other day, me and my dad were talking, and one of the things he said was that, it's so important to tell the truth, not just because, lying is bad, but because we're all human beings, and human beings deserve to have the truth. What you were saying about those people that you were oh, it was a realization to you that they're human beings, just realizing that everyone around us deserves to know the truth. So I thought that was cool.
That's beautiful. I'm glad we all have good advice around us. Now going back to the interview, you said your wife is Christian, right?
Yes.
And so you're obviously working with people from different faiths. So what advice do you give for young adults trying to build friendships with people of different religions?
I always tell them to look at the person and to keep an open mind. And don't come with the predetermined thoughts. It's very important to seek, like, how's it? I was going to say truth, and this is, Ocean, what you said, but because it's be honest with each other, and if you had something like a question to ask, like try to educate yourself all the time with others, people, where they what's their background, where did they come from. That will help you understand some of the things that they do, and would make a friendship much more like strong, and probably would last much longer.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, just like truly trying to understand them and see where they're coming from, and not having predetermined beliefs about them or thoughts. So what is something that gives you hope for the future of interfaith cooperation and humanitarian work?
We work a lot in the Middle East, and as you know, the Middle East is always a place that a lot of conflicts happen, and one is happening right now. Whenever we wanted to go into an area, they would tell us it's a very mess, probably would affect you. And we work, for instance, one of the places we work with in Gaza, which is a very, very hard situation. There's a lot of needs, and we have a huge team on the ground, and we do a lot of work. And another one is Syria, among other places in the Middle East we worked, in Iraq and in Lebanon and other places, which all are very dangerous areas during conflicts. But somehow we found this ability among like people who are on the ground, or some of our employees that are from so many different backgrounds and religious, to be safe among the people that we work with, because people understand when you have no political agenda or any other agenda in the back of your mind, and you're really here to help them. People see through any politics or any propaganda someone is trying to put out there. So I'm very hopeful. I've worked with so many Christians, Jews, Muslims, and other faith groups that we all put our trust in each other, and we were really in dangerous situation. Any one of us could lose their life if someone else would betray us. But somehow the trust worked, and people kept each other safe, and that puts a lot of hope in my mind, that even though we are hearing always about the bad stories and the conflicts and the killings, but there is so many beautiful stories of compassion, of friendship, of things that have been done in the Middle East every day that are not being told.
While you were saying that, it came to my mind that, like, I'm sure there's moments where you're just, doubtful. I'm sure there's moments where you're like, oh, like, this is just so hard. Is there any specific scripture, any specific quote, song that helps you overcome doubt?
The founder of the organization I work, she's a child of Holocaust survivor. And I really admire her story of survival and how she came as a stateless citizen to the United States. And she tells me the story, and one of the reasons, like, I think I might botch this, I'm not a very good Bible scholar, but I think it Leviticus that she said, I will never stand idly by while the blood of my neighbor cries from the earth. So that's something that always I admired in her, because she came to a place where she had no interest of helping people that she had no knowledge about. She just saw a crisis, and she reflected on her history and how she would have loved a stranger to come and aid her during her time. Something like to charge your phone. So very simple things, but that was huge. And I always remember this thing that she said it to me, and that's kept in my mind throughout my work.
Yeah, I love that so much. And as we wrap up, do you have any last pieces of advice that you would want to give our listeners?
So since you are in college and school, and I was, I probably reflect on my days in college. One thing that I think is, like, be genuine, be true to yourself. With time, people change, but I think the more you interact and reach out to people that are outside of your comfort zone, the more opportunities will open for you, the more that you could help people that you've never thought that you would interact with. Life is an adventure, and you never know where the next day you will be at. I thought I will be doing business and increase my bank account, and now I can't get out of my humanitarian work. Every time there is a business opportunity, I said, I can't. Like, this is my passion. I feel happy with what I'm doing. And it's, money isn't, I think, it gets you comfortable life, but I think there is so many important things in life, family, people who are around you, your community, your town, I love when I go out in my community and everyone around me tells me good morning, how are you? These things matter. You make you happy. It makes you feel that life is beautiful. Live your life, be adventurous, and, God is watching us and will reward us for our good deeds. I believe in that.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, take a leap and share it with your friends and family. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Take a Leap is a production of BYU Radio. I'm Ocean Marshall, and our production team includes James Sturdivant, Aaliyah Alexander, Heidi Hansen, and Neftali Rodriguez.